So one of the resources that we want to put on the channel that you might not find other places or hard to find would be someone else's perspective. We call these FaithWalk interviews, and it just kind of came to be. The one you're going to see here was basically, I was trying to figure out how this worked. I had never interviewed anybody, and I've been interviewed and I'm in business and that kind of thing, but not on camera, and that's a whole different deal with the questions and the personal questions and how that goes. So I really wanted to get a feel for that and have an understanding, and I want to put myself in the interviewee's shoes. And here's what I did with that. We went in, set up a camera and everything in the house like we would at somebody else's home, and we set that all up, got that ready. I had asked my kids to interview me, have questions. Don't tell me what the questions were, just you know, fire away. Think about the questions that you have, and just fire away when the camera's rolling. And you know, I want to know what that's like. I also wanted to line out and get an idea of what questions we should ask others. So they provided some of the questions that we ask other interviewees as well. So there's a whole thing. And initially it was just, let's get a feel for how this is going to work for others. But you know, that whole lead by example thing, I felt that if I'm asking other people to put some of their story out and be interviewed and be put on the spot and do that, then I should put mine out first and have that kind of be an example, not of what to say or any of that kind of stuff, because I probably fumbled around. I don't even remember. I was just completely off the cuff with my answers, you know, and it wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was literally setting up a camera in the way that we were going to do it for other people, and pressing record and going through and figuring out that the camera's cut out at 30 minutes. And, you know, it was about figuring out all the AV stuff and all those other things. But within that, I don't know, we ended up having an interview done by my kids of me. So here it is. How do you know that God's real if you can't see him? Well, how do you know that? That's a good question. That's a very good question. Good start. How do you know that air exists? Would be the question that I would ask. Can't see it, but we breathe it. There's also a lot of things, like for me, I've had a lot of experiences that have shown me that God is for real. You know, heard his voice at times, not all the time, but at certain times. But yeah, I would say probably there are a lot of things that we never see, but we believe in. And I think with God, there's far more evidence of him existing than people realize. And part of what I'm doing 122 for is to have people do that, search for that stuff and look for those signs and those things, and be able to know that God exists even though they don't see him. That's one of the very reasons that we're looking to do this. There are lots of things that have stood the test of time. There's lots of research that has been done. History and science confirm the existence of God in many ways. And yeah, it's a really good starting question. But it's not a short answer. Lots of different ways. So personally, for me, I know God exists because of all the research I did. You know, I had to learn that he existed. You know, I didn't just take it because somebody told me. It wasn't because I went to church on Sundays that I believed that God existed. When I truly believed that God existed, it was because I went looking to see if he did. I did the work. I researched stuff. Lots and lots of things. Part of me was trying to prove that he didn't exist. And in that search and that journey, I discovered that he did. And a lot of different evidence to substantiate that, to tell you that. So for me, I was very analytical with it. I needed to know, I needed to see it. I didn't, you know, I was like doubting Thomas, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having those questions. I think it's really good. So how do I know I believed when I first believed? Well, honestly, I thought I believed for a long time, and I really didn't. It kind of hit me like a ton of bricks one day. I was actually, I was in New York at a camp, just random. I had somebody that I just met, talked to me a little bit about Jesus, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, but that day, he explained that Christ is your Savior and God gave up His Son for you. And I think I was in my 20s. I think I don't remember that. I remember when it happened. I remember what happened. The when is kind of foggy. I'm getting old. But that's what happened. And I remember driving home and with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and telling her, he actually did this, and kind of being excited about it, and her questioning whether I was excited, if that was real or if I was just kind of putting on a show for her, because I had argued with her and questioned everything about the faith and the things that she had grown up believing, and I had grown up believing in the Catholic Church as well, or grown up learning, I should say. So that's that day, that's kind of how I came to Christ that day. I had thought that I knew what that meant years and years prior, and I really didn't. I didn't realize I was kidding myself until that day, and something just clicked, and it was because somebody had a conversation with me, and it was out of the blue, unexpected. I think I've talked to that person once since then, just very random, but God's got a way of hitting you at certain spots. So you're asking if it's easier to grow up in the church or grow up knowing of God or being taught that, or if it's easier not knowing and then discovering Him on your own and that journey. I can only speak to one of those. My path was what my path was. We'll have some other people here that will help us. They will show their story. My story is this: I grew up in the Catholic Church. My parents had us in Sunday school at PSR, and we went to church every Sunday. And that was one of those things, and we went. We were told we were supposed to go. We were told we were going to do PSR, and so I can only speak to knowing about God or learning about God every week. That being said, I can tell you that even though I grew up knowing about God or learning the stories, the Bible stories and things like that, it took probably another 20 years after that time for me to really get it, or understand any aspect of it. And I think, and it is a little scary, because if you know God and you understand, what it is to be a Christian, and you read and you do get those stories, you learn the parables and what the Bible says, you're held into a higher account. I mean, the Bible says that, because you know of Him. Babies and things like that, they are not held into that account because they don't know. So somebody that's unchurched and has never had any experience, with the church, being saved, I don't want to say it's easier or harder, because I can't answer that question. I can tell you, I thought I knew stuff growing up in the church and learning in PSR and I really didn't. I didn't start learning about God until I went seeking Him myself. And I think that's the point. I think maybe it's the same situation for either side. We'll have to ask somebody else that question. But I don't think anybody truly understands or is strong in their faith unless they go do their homework, unless they put the work into figuring out what that is and really studying and understanding it. I think whether you've experienced it on every Sunday or not, I don't think that matters. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but I think what matters is when you start looking for yourself, that's when you really learn about God. Attending church, going to Bible study, it's good to learn those stories, but until you really go looking for yourself, you're not going to learn, and you're not going to grow your own faith. I don't know if that answers the question. Oh, When did I have the most doubts in my life? There have been several times that I've had doubts throughout my life. I would say when I had the most, in my teenage years, for sure. That's when I kind of walked away from going to church and didn't really believe in all the hogwash. I just wasn't sure what to think of it, and that was really when I was doubting all that stuff, for sure. That was probably the most doubt that I had. Now, throughout my journey, as I got older and was doing other things, I had other periods of that. You're going to go through doubt. I've probably been through 3 or 4 times when I really seriously doubted or felt like God wasn't present, at least. And I'll probably witness with some of those. But yeah, that's, you're going to doubt. You're going to question at times. But yeah, my 13 to probably 22, 24, I don't know. That range was definitely a big time of doubt for me. The best thing that I did, though, is I started looking for answers, and I did my research and really worked toward trying to figure out what I believed. I think that was the key there, is I didn't just stop with, I don't know about this stuff. But, you're going to have times when you do just doubt. Well, that's a good question. Did my trials make my faith stronger? I think it depends on which trials you're talking about. I think there were times, I know there were times that I had a strong faith and it helped me get through my trials. I've had other times where, looking back, my trials may have strengthened my faith. But the honest answer is, I don't think so. I think my faith helped me through all my trials. I think that's the big difference. I think there are people that believe that you have to go through hard times to have faith. Not true. The times that my faith was the strongest was not directly related, and that might not be anybody else's story, but my story is it's not really related to bad things and God getting me through it. My faith was based on the foundation that I laid. By doing the research and looking for it to not be true, and then finding those things out, the foundation of that faith, that's what strengthened me the most. And that helped me get through those trials and tribulations and helped me to process what was going on better. So I understood. So the Bible said that we're going to go through trials. It says that. So because I knew that, because of the research and the effort I put in and others put into me, frankly, because I had people helping me in my walk. And, I was going to men's groups and I was doing things between the Sundays, which is very important. Just going to church on Sundays, you're not going to get far in your faith walk if that's all you do. And that might sound controversial or whatever, but I've lived it. If I kept just going to church on Sunday, I'd still be just sitting in the seat and not understanding what this is all about. So I would say that through my life, and I've been through some stuff, my faith is not directly related to the trials and tribulations, but my faith allowed me to persevere through those and understand that they were there for a reason, and provided me wisdom to understand what that reason was. Maybe not at that time, but later looking back, I could see the grand design in it, and it allows me to push through things more than maybe others, because I know at the end of it there's a better plan. I'm going to be a better version of myself through it, and the faith has allowed me to do that. And lots and lots of people praying for me. It wasn't just what I did, that's for sure. When do I think my faith was peaking? I think my faith was the strongest right before and during being diagnosed with a brain tumor. So before I was diagnosed with that, I was actually at the height of my faith, and it was because I was putting work in. I was reading, and not reading every day and not every morning and that kind of thing. I think too many people think you have to be that perfect Christian that's getting up in the morning and reading the Bible and putting in. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but that just that wasn't how I grew. I grew by just whatever I learned, whatever I studied, I applied it or tried to apply it. You know, it wasn't about reading the Bible from cover to cover. It was about going to the Word and learning about things, and then taking that thing that I learned and then directly applying it. And I would try to do that the same week. But back to what you asked. So my faith was the strongest before being diagnosed, and I think I'll tell you a little something about that should prove that to you. When we went into the doctor, we were going to, and when I say we, it was my wife and I, we went to get checked out because we thought I might have MS, because my dad had MS, and my dad had passed away, but we thought that that's what was going on. Went there, and in the doctor's office, again, being tested for MS, he comes in and he says, well, other than the tumor, everything looks okay. My wife and I looked at each other, looked at him, just astonished, and he had no idea that I had never been told that I had a tumor, because he couldn't believe that I hadn't been diagnosed before. So yeah, that was a little bit of boo-hoo on the doctor's part. But here's the thing that I really want you to hear. That was a shock to the system for sure, for both her and I. When I got home that day, went out to my office, and I wrote something down on a piece of paper. I wrote down, "Dear Satan, thank you for making me stronger. P.S. You lose." And you don't write that down the day that you find that information out if you're not strong in your faith. So I would say that was probably the strongest of my faith. And there were some other things that happened through that where, you know, I heard God tell me that I was going to be in church on Sunday. I had brain surgery on a Wednesday. Whole other story. But yes, to answer your question, that was the height of my faith, is before that and through that. And then what happened after that. But I wouldn't say that it increased it. I would say it confirmed or affirmed my faith. Everything that I went through with that. So you're asking if it's easy or hard to tell others about Christ. That's very hard for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but for me that's very hard. My heart is actually with helping others grow in their faith. You know, the evangelizing, and God gives us all in different ways, which is something I learned as I went through all this, and still go through this every day. But we're all gifted differently. There are people that are gifted with evangelism, and others that are gifted in different ways. So God equips you to do what you can do with certain situations. I personally am not good at talking to people about Christ. I think there are a lot of people, I know that there are a lot of people out there that are good at that. For me, I think God wants me to be helping people that have heard that good news, but don't know how to grow into the next phase of their life. Don't take it to the next level and really learn what that means. We tend to lose sight of that in the church. I say the church. We focus on bringing people to the Christ or talking about it. For me, that's hard to do, and also I don't believe what I'm called to do, if that makes sense. I would rather talk to somebody about things I've learned with the Bible and mention things like that. Did I have motivation to research if God was real at first? You mean like when I was going through PSR as a young Catholic, or
in general?
In general, I didn't really seek God for a long time. I think that's probably the simplest way to answer that question. No, I didn't know I had to. No one explained to me that I was supposed to go looking for Him. And hopefully, this channel gets other people seeking and looking more, because it took me a long time. There's a big gap between when I thought I was a Christian to when I realized what that actually meant, like years and years. Oh, okay, so what's my definition of a Christian? I walked right into that one. Let me restate something that I said earlier. I said I went from, I believe I said I went from thinking I was a Christian to realizing what that was. So a Christian is somebody that believes that Christ came for their sins and saved them. That's the easy answer. But I think we do a disservice. There's a disservice that's done to many people without really going into all the details of what it means to walk that life. So there are a lot of Christians out there that aren't practicing Christianity, that aren't living it each day, and it's up to God at the end of the day. I know for me, and I can speak for myself, I would not feel like I was a Christian if I didn't live it and bring it with me every day and try to do things based on my belief in Christ and in God and in the Bible. How did I tell my parents that I was doubting because they were Catholics and strong Christians? Yeah, I will say this, my parents probably didn't like it when I started bucking the system and not wanting to go to church. But at the same time, they let me be me. And I think it's important. They let me question that stuff. I also think they didn't fully, and I don't want to, I don't want this to come out wrong, but I don't think they knew how to handle the questions that I had. I don't think they could answer those at the time. There's a lot of stuff going on in our lives as well. We were all pretty crushed with some of the stuff that was going on personally, and I think we were all pretty worn in general. And we might have all been questioning at the same time. Never had that discussion with my parents. Honestly, I don't believe having that discussion or them saying that it was okay. They were accepting of me questioning, but I don't remember ever having the discussion of them going, it's okay to do this. What questions do you have? It might have happened, but I don't remember that. I do remember them being okay with me being me. And I think that was very important. And I wouldn't have struggled, walked away from the church, kind of walked away from it all, and then I wouldn't have ended up finding God later and really learning what I did if they weren't okay with that. If they kept me going to church on Sunday because I had to. I wasn't 18. They could have said, "You're going because you're in this house and you're gonna go, darn it, and just because you're gonna," this might not be a popular thing to say, but I really think if they would have taken that tone with me and they would have, and don't get me wrong, they really wanted me to go, and there was a period of time that wasn't the thing, but I think they would have done that with me during that time. It would have pushed me further away from the faith. I don't know if I would have ever gotten to a point where I was questioning enough and looking for the answers. I think I would have just been like, this is all it is. I wouldn't have gone seeking at some point. Now it took time, and that's something I could look at now. At the time, I just, I had parents that kind of made a deal and said, hey, at this point in time, if when you get confirmed, it's up to you. That's kind of how this works. So they stuck to what they said they would do and didn't push the agenda. They did, of course, encourage it, and don't get me wrong, they did all that. But when it came down to it, I was able to be me, and I think that helped in the long run. But yeah, that's not an easy path. Oh, how do I know the Bible wasn't just a bunch of stuff people wrote out and just threw in a book? Answer might surprise you. History tells us that didn't happen. Not the Bible, history. Science tells us that didn't happen. For me, that's really what told me that. That's how I learned it. I did think it was all hogwash. I did think that people just got in a room and wrote it, and it is what it is. And there's the canon, however you want to say that. that people just decided what goes in there, you know, and here are the books, and gosh, the Catholic Bible has 6 more books, but every religion's got its own Bible. You know, I thought all that. I really did. I thought every religion had its own Bible. They figured out what they wanted to say, and they put it in there. One of the reasons was I never really opened the book, because growing up Catholic, the priest kind of told you what it said, and I don't know if that's I'm not bashing by any stretch, but my interpretation was that's how it worked. They told you, and you just went, they're interpreting it for me. This is what it says. So I never really looked at it. You know, we had a Bible that was on a table that was a nice, pretty Bible, and it wasn't open very often, if at all. So that was my interpretation. Again, I'm not saying that that's what Catholics believe. I'm saying that was my interpretation growing up, again, as a young person. With so many different versions of the Bible, how do I know, or what made me think that I knew which one was right? Well, in my research, when I started looking at all that, that was one of the things that I really, you know, as I had mentioned earlier, I believe, I really thought everybody had a different Bible, all the different religions. I was stunned when I started really reading the Bibles, and I did a video on this where I kind of went through what I did. I got my hands on a few different Bibles, and I put them next to each other, and I read the same verses from each of them, and I was stunned that they were pretty much the same. And the content certainly wasn't. The meaning certainly was the same. You know, there were some different subtle things between them, but that was huge for me, because I did think that they were all written by the different religions. And it turns out the translations aren't that different. The way that it's interpreted for all those religions is what differs. And then that gave me even more questions. I started asking, like, how's everybody, this is the same book, and now we have like 5,500 religions, and why, if we're reading the same thing, because I went through and I proved to myself that the translations were still saying the same stuff. That just made me wonder about religion. So I would say I'm a man of faith, but not of religion, because of that very thing. That's one of the things that really opened my eyes. We're all looking at the same book, but you know, religion is the man's interpretation of that book. That's the difference between faith and religion to me. Just my opinion. Did I feel pressured growing up to become a Christian? Meaning going to Sunday school, PSR. I don't know if I felt pressured, and honestly, thinking about it now, and I haven't thought about this for a while, a lot of my friends went to church with me, you know, really in the same group of guys that I still hang out with. Most of them went to the Catholic Church with me. It was a big church. That's where you went. Yeah, and I haven't thought about that for a while, but yeah, I didn't feel pressured. It was just kind of what you did, you know. At that point in time, parents took their kids to church, and there were a lot more people in church. You know, we're talking 80s and 90s. Like that's just kind of what you did. That's certainly what we did, and certainly what my friends did. So no, I would say I didn't feel pressured like that. And at the time, it wasn't like it is today. There's a lot more. There are a lot more opinions out there. A lot more. And I won't get into all that stuff, but I think it's definitely harder to be a Christian nowadays. So, you know, I said anything was open for questions. You're asking me about what I think about the LGBTQ community, plus community. Sorry, we didn't have these things as I was growing up as far as the terminology. So, I mean, no disrespect to anybody. I struggle with saying that. I think I've known people, and I'm sure I know people now that are in that community, and I would do my best not to judge them, but I would also let them know what my beliefs are and what my thoughts are. If they were to ask, or you know, if I felt uncomfortable, I would tell them that that I would be uncomfortable just with their lifestyle and I just don't understand it. I think it's important to have those discussions. It's important to kind of set that boundary and let them know that that's not me, but you do you. You know, because it's between them and God, all the decisions that they make, all the decisions that I make between God and I. You know, I'm sure people are going to be like, oh my gosh, you need to say that it's not. Listen, I am certainly nowhere close to being able to understand what God's will is and what He wants. I can tell you, biblically, it tells you, you know, what a marriage should be, but it also says that divorce happens, you know. So I am not going to interpret Scripture on this. You ask what my opinion is, you know, my opinion is that, you know, if somebody, you know, asked me, I would, you know, I don't really have one, you know, I don't understand it. So there's this whole pronoun thing and all that stuff that it wasn't around with me growing up, and you know, reading the Bible, there's a man and a woman, you know, but I think we get too focused on that. I think we put too much light on that, and you know, I think it's a small percentage of, you know, kids in school or people in the world or whatever the case may be, and we focus so much on that we end up over stimulating or over exaggerating the importance of that and not talk about the other things. If you're going to talk about it, that's great, but talk about the other stuff too. You know, if you're going to focus so much on that lifestyle, give the same focus to, you know, the other lifestyles. I think that's what I kind of struggle with, is I think there's so much focus in our schools on that specific, you know, area, and it's not an even distribution of those lifestyles, and I think it becomes more of an issue than it actually is, because we make it so. We focus so much on that, and you know, the issue with focusing on that is it's, you know, it takes away from focus elsewhere. You know, I'm going to spend my time being the best version of myself, not worrying about what somebody else is doing, and I think that's the bottom line. So how do you become confident in yourself and figure out who you are as a Christian was I think the first part of that question. You know, I think there's, you know, my walk, I kind of figured myself out before I figured out what it was like to be a Christian or how that looked. So, you know, if you're trying to do both at the same time, I can get where that's tough. I certainly didn't have that path. That walk, I kind of figured out who I was prior. Now, hindsight being 2020, you know, we are made in a certain way, and God gives us in certain ways to be unique. We're supposed to all be unique. One of the pastors at the church, one of his big things was, we are all special, unique, and priceless. And it's so true, that God made us that way, and we're made for such a time as this. That was the other part of that. And you know, it's a simple statement, but it's true. And God created us, and He wants us to seek the best version of ourselves and to understand and to put those things in play. You know, I think the second part of the question, or the other part of the question, is how do you build confidence and how do you become yourself when there are all these rules, maybe, in Christianity? You know, the Bible says to give it to God and to be humble and to do all this other stuff. Yeah, but it's hard to do all those things at the same time, and I think we're not perfect. I mess up every day, every hour of every day. Just ask my wife. Just kidding. But no, I mean, we're flawed, and God doesn't expect us to be perfect and to use every single thing that He's given us at one time. It's a journey. It's a long journey. It's a marathon. I think He just wants us to put effort into it. You know, if you're in a relationship, you want the other person putting effort into it. And I struggle with some things there, but there are certain things that play in my head. I would say it became less of a struggle for me to become a better version of myself when I started studying things more, and I understood what the Bible was actually saying because I had context. I had people that were helping me understand. I was reading books to help interpret the Bible better, and not just read it and go, oh, this is what it says, but to apply it. It actually made my life easier. So things like, I have these different tapes that play in my head, and they're all biblically based. When I'm nervous, I go to the parts of worry in the Bible. When I'm having an issue, I bring out my phone and I look that issue up. Depression, things like that. Anything that I have going on, I use it as a source to help me. So I know a lot of people think it's all about rules, and I did too. Honestly, I just thought it was a bunch of rules and whatever, and you need rules to get to heaven. It's when you really go in and do the research and you really study it and study with others, you realize how wrong that is. I realized how wrong it was myself, and how I had it all backwards. It's not about the rules, it's about having a guide to life. It really has been a guide to my life and helped me in all different ways, and I try to live it every day. Am I Bible thumping and talking to everybody about Christ? Absolutely not. But it's a foundation and it's built into me, so it's not God above all. God is in all the things that I do because of that. So it's helped me. It's helped guide my path on a daily basis, and but I do understand the question. Initially, I thought it was all about the other things, and the more I learned, the more I realized it's really just about trying to get you to be the better version of yourself, or the best version of yourself. Helps a lot. Okay. I have no idea if that's going to go together with what I said, but
it's fine.
It's fine. There's enough.
Did you feel like you were rushed time-wise with God coming again?
Oh, yeah, we didn't get to that. Okay. All right, do I feel like I was rushed? I didn't feel pressure to become a Christian, or to not necessarily become a Christian, but have a timeline on it. In fact, there are some people that were spreading the fire and brimstone, total fire and brimstone approach, and said you're going to hell if you don't get saved, and all that kind of stuff. That never worked for me. Those people just irritated me, frankly. So no, I didn't feel that pressure. It was just a journey that I was on, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't go looking for a specific thing, and I think one of the key things is I had no expectations. I went openly to find out more, and whatever the truth was, or whatever I discovered, that's just what it was going to be. And I think that was a huge thing. So no, I didn't have any requirements or restrictions or feel that way. I will tell you this though, related to the fire and brimstone kind of approach. The first day that I walked into the church where I'm still currently going, by the way, the pastor basically told the congregation that I was going to hell. Not stood me up and said that, but said because Catholics and all these other religions, they don't know what they're doing. They're going to hell. I kid you not. That was the message the day that I walked into the church. So yeah, I was already questioning it. I was already not about all that. So yeah, crazy part though, I kept going because there's a girl involved, and I kept going because of that. But that wasn't God's plan. God's plan was to have me continue to go so that the next pastor that came in and replaced him, who really had a big impact on me and helped me with my Christian walk a great deal, I was supposed to be there for that. And had I not stuck it out, had I not done that, that would have never happened. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that type of preaching or message being sent. It is, I believe it's more important to help people study and learn for themselves and go on their own journey. It's part of what all this is. So I really wish somebody would have fostered that in me a lot sooner. So between the time that I came to Christ and the time that I really started studying and got to the point where I felt like I was walking the walk, or at least trying to, 15 years probably. A long time, maybe more than that, actually. And that's not even counting when I was younger and I thought that I was a Christian. I'm talking like when I came to Christ, like that story that I told about going to a camp in New York and having them, and just realizing that Jesus died for me and God gave up his son for me. I'm talking between then and when I started putting the work in and figuring out that I needed to do that. Yeah. So short version is way too long. Way too long, and too many people have that same story. And we'll be asking others the same. That's a good question. We'll ask others that question because that's the gap I want to shrink or help shrink. And if nothing else, getting people to go looking for themselves. I'm not even worried about the conclusions they come to. It's not my story. I'm not the one. It's not my journey. I just want them to look. I want you to look and discover things and make up your own mind. That's really what it's about. And we just need to do better at helping people grow, or at least helping people to seek. All right. Good timing. Can I have some water, please?
No.
I feel like I'm the one doing all the talking.
Behind the scenes.
Would taking a shower be distracting?
Is that all your questions?
As long as you don't sing in the shower like I do, and yeah.
You don't have any other questions right now?
Yeah. Okay. Wait, before you said that, last time, I was like, I turned to Nicole, I'm like, I have to fart, and you looked in the middle of a sentence.
Is that why you were laughing?
Yeah. We were both like...
And having drink next to whoever we're interviewing, that will be bringing water and doing it, will be a good thing.
Yeah, it was hilarious, so
we're just trying to figure this stuff out. So.
Please don't fart, please don't fart.
And hopefully we have some things that we can use. Nice! If you would have farted, it would have laughed and it would have been fine.
If you're like...
Let her rip!
I'm going to put that in there. The let her rip, you'll hear that in the background on one of the things.
Yeah.
Of course that turns on right now. Is there something that you want to ask me from my response? Or do you want to go in different directions? Or something that I said that because you can say, oh yeah, well what do you think about that? Or what about this? Or you can go to the next one. It's up to you.
Can I ask you a how you feel question?
You can ask me whatever you want.
How did you know when you first started believing? How did you know that you believed?
I really thought that I believed for a long time. I have to do that again.
Sorry.
So, and I didn't repeat the question either, which was bad. You gotta stop, seriously. We're gonna be here forever. Yeah, we are, if you keep doing that. So, ask the question again. What was it again? Sorry, I need to repeat the question.
How did you know that you believed when you first believed?
Okay.
You literally act like you're eating a lemon. You're like...
You're recording him doing it?
No.
You should get him doing it for us,
should.
not for anybody else.
But he was like...
I know, because I was trying not to hold
He's trying not to laugh. He's trying to be quiet.
Oh, I know. It was just funny, though, because I was looking at you, you're like...
We're still recording. You could stop that if you want.
Oh, I know.
Okay. We'll have some bloopers from this one. Which is fine. I think that'll be funny. Alright, anyway.
Yeah, that's more... Why don't we do that?
Goodness gracious. Don't.
Listen, I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional.
That's debatable. Very debatable.
I never said it was debatable. I said it was fact.
Okay.
Big difference.
Because I put the kickstand up like that.
Oh, yeah. Don't do it.
Don't put the kickstand up, please.